For me, creativity or writing or storytelling is expressing myself. As an individual with ideas, with opinions, with thoughts, I think it is important to have a voice. And I remember a very famous Urdu nazm by Faiz Ahmad Faiz, which goes like, Bol ke lab azad hain tere. So the words are free, and I think as individuals, we should have the right to express ourselves. So I think that is the definition of creativity to me.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Closet Writer Chronicles. I'm your host Sangeeta, aka the Moody Marshmallow. You just heard our guest for today, Eshan Sharma. Eshan is a writer, heritage activist, and a TEDx speaker. He is the founder of one of India's leading history collectives, Karwaan, the Heritage Exploration Initiative. A graduate in history from Delhi University, he is currently pursuing a master's degree in modern Indian history from MSU Baroda. Eshan is also currently working on a book project on the new wave in Indian cinema. Before we move into the conversation, I want to give a quick shout out to Zencaster, Podcasting Made Easy. I've been podcasting for about 2 years now, and I stumbled onto Zencaster while I was recording season 2 of the show. Though I only use the audio recording version, they have a video recording feature as well, and you can now edit your episodes on the platform. If you're a podcaster looking for an all-in-one podcast workstation, then check out Zencaster. You'll find a special offer link in the description of this episode, for which you'll get 30% off by using the code ClosetWriter. Now let's tune in to hear about Eshan's journey with writing, history, Karwaan Heritage, and more. Hi everyone, welcome to the Closet Writer Chronicles. This week I have with me Eshan Sharma. Welcome to the show, Eshan. It is so good to finally have you here.
Thank you so much, Sangeeta. It's an honor to be here.
No, not at all. I'm glad we could, finally sit down and have this conversation. As I mentioned in your intro, you are a history student, you're an aspiring historian, and of course, Karwan Heritage, the wonderful work you're doing. So, the first question I have for you is, what is your earliest memory of being creative, and what is the first memory you have of even, just starting to write?
So I think I get this from my family. My both my grandparents, as in the paternal and the maternal grandfather, were writers, and I think my parents are academicians and scientists, so they also write their research. So I don't know. I think it's genetic almost. It's in the genes. It's in the blood that. I grew up reading a lot of Urdu poets actually because my grandfather was a fan of Urdu sher o shairi. So I grew up in that kind of environment, and that kind of helped me um, shape my own trajectory in some senses. So the earliest memory of me being creative is, uh, I think, painting and those competitions in school. And I was pretty good at that, I believe. I want to believe that. I won a few prizes here and there, but yeah, that was the first, uh, the seeds were sown there in the school. And then I wrote my first book when I was 17 in 2017. I was still in school, I think class 11th. So that's again the first, that stamp lag gaya on being a writer.
So, okay, that's really cool. And I want to really come to the book later on in the conversation because I found that really fascinating that you actually got yourself published at age 17. But then, how did your interest in history begin and when did you kind of take the decision that you wanted to actually professionally pursue this? Because it's not necessarily a very conventional career choice in most cases. So then, how did you kind of decide that for yourself?
I think again, if I go back in my childhood, when I was 8 or 9, which was 2008 or 9, YouTube was pretty young at that time. YouTube was very new in India, And my grandfather wanted me to always play him, you know, play him the old songs from YouTube to him, and he was just there, and he liked them. Through that, I started listening to old Hindi film music from 1930s KL Saigal or 1940s Noor Jahaan or Talat Mahmood and other kind of things that the oldies wanted me to play on YouTube. Uh, from that, you know, I went on asking my grandfather, okay, you tell me about this actor. Who is this? Do you know where he is now or where they are now? Then I remember one story where he mentioned that Madam Noor Jahan, one of the greatest singers of all time, for me, better than Lata Mangeshkar.
Okay,
So
yeah.
Madam Noor Jahan migrated to Pakistan after independence, and then there she became one of the biggest names. Even the Nishana Imtiaz and other awards, and became the Mallika Tarannum. So all sorts of those things, and then from that you also got to know about how that migration happened in 47. People went from here and there, so things like that really fascinated me as a young kid. And then I always, on every birthday, I used to get GK books as my
Oh,
gift. So
okay.
there used to be a publication called Upkar Publication, and they used to bring out these yearbooks. So I had a collection of yearbooks from 2008 to 2015, 16. So that was the beginning of this interest in history. And then I thought, also because I was very bad in science, and
Okay.
my entire family, three generation of my family is scientists. So they were very surprised that I was not very good in science. But so I think mathematics and you know commerce and arts were the only two fields available for me. I was very bad at maths as well, so that left me with no choice but humanities. So I essentially wanted to get into political science and become a politician or something like that. But
Okay.
I couldn't get good marks in class 12th. I was very bad in academics. And uh, at that time, Delhi University had this cutoff system.
Yeah.
If you are 98, you get this college. If you are 92, you get this college. Now it's more of a competitive exam kind of an admission process. Earlier it was not. So, so I had 89%, which was fairly good at that time. Now it's very less if you compare it to today's standards. But I got into history, and Hindi में you say कि मरता क्या ना करता. So, if you have no option, then you try to make the best of what you have got. So that's what I did. And that's how my real passion into history kind of started emerging in a big way
Oh. So then it only really sparked when you got into college. Is that what
in college.
happened with
Yes.
you? Okay, that's interesting because I don't know. I would have imagined. I mean, obviously, you had this whole exposure with your grandparents in the sense of going through like old songs, and I think grandparents just have that effect on you in general. Because I remember listening to my grandmother. Like she'd share stories about because she used to live in Trivandrum in Kerala, and she tell me stories of what partition was like for them because they were so far away from it, but what it was like hearing the news. And she'd be going to like because she went to a convent school, and the news there, how people would be talking about different things and the salt march. And so it's really fascinating to kind of hear about these things from like people who've actually lived through that time and kind of get those different influences. In fact, she was a student of history, so it's really cool that you kind of had those experiences for sure. But having said that, then when did you get the idea to start Karwan? Because clearly, you got into college, you were studying history. So then when did that love really like take over for history and you said, hey, why don't I do something for history education in this space? So how did that happen?
So I think I would, uh, if I have to think about the origins of the idea, it has to do with the education system. The education system forces one to limit their imaginations to a classroom. And history is a subject which requires exploration. You can't really study history in a vacuum. You can't really study in a classroom. So you have to go out, and fortunately, my college, Dayal Singh in Delhi University, was in close proximity to places like Humayun's Tomb or Lodhi Garden or Safdarjung Tomb, Khan Market, four of the most historically important places in New Delhi. So I decided that I would go there and start exploring and start bunking classes a little and exploring them. And a few of my friends joined me in this venture, and we then called it something called Walk and Learn Initiative. And that's how it started in around September 2019, when I was still in my first year, end of first year, I believe, the second semester or something. And because, yeah, we were very frustrated with the system of with the pedagogical methods of teaching history. So we thought we would do something new for the students. So we decided we would read up things on about the monument from the books, and then we will kind of take our friends around, show them that we studied this in the lecture. Now we are seeing this in front of us. So giving them hands-on experience of history, which is not quite uh, popular in humanities. It's more with the science provides you hands-on experiences, the kind of understanding that people have, and people say that history has more to do with the text than the practical implementations. But we say that that's not the case in reality. History is a science, and it has its own methods, it has its own ways, its own training. So we decided that we'll go ahead with that and do that.
Hmm. So you just decided then to kind of like start with these walks, and then how did you then further develop it into like Karwan? Because clearly it just started as these events, or was it already branded as Karwan? Did you guys just come up with the name and?
So it has a funny story. When we started this Walk and Learn initiative, I took the burden or the charge to do the first walk. The first walk was supposed to be at APJ Abdul Kalam Memorial in Delhi, at the Delhi INA Delhi Heart. There's a small museum dedicated to Dr. Kalam and his belongings. My first book was on Dr. Kalam, so I thought it would be interesting to show people around and talk about Dr. Kalam and the influences, etc., etc. And we had a pre-registration kind of a thing. I think 10, 15 people registered, and but we didn't charge anybody for that. So nobody turned up for the
Oh,
event.
okay, okay,
Nobody came for the walk. It was a big failure. Then my father said, don't be sad. It would be good, etc., etc. Then we were thinking of what to do next because it was a big failure, and we thought there's no chance that this would succeed. Why would somebody come and listen to a student talk about anything? So the first thing that came to our mind was to change the name and make it more attractive, make it more historically, sound.
hmm,
So we decided we'll call it. Then it was a big struggle to get a better suited name for the initiative. So we got a very long name. We got it Karwan, the Heritage Exploration Initiative. It's a very big name. Now people call it in popular parlance, it's Karwaan Heritage. But
yeah,
so we renamed Walk and Learn Initiative, made it Karwaan. And at that time, I was attending a book launch in Delhi by a book by Vikramjit Singh Rooprai called The Top 10 Baolis. It was on 10 stepwells of Delhi, and
okay,
the guest of honor who was launching the book was Sohail Hashmi. Sohail Hashmi, though, for those who don't know, Sohail Hashmi is one of the biggest names in this field of heritage exploration, heritage walks in Delhi. He was the chief guest. I went on the dais after the launch and I asked him, Sir, we have started this and this in our college. It's a students-led initiative. Would you like to lead a walk?
mm,
And to our surprise, he agreed. And he led the first official walk of Karwan on, I think, 16 September 2019. It was attended by about 20 people from different universities in Delhi. We started as a group only for students. The walks were exclusively for students. And later on, when we went ahead with it and we did some more walks, we opened it for the public. And we introduced this idea in our walks that students' fee would be 50% lesser than the normal fee. So if we are having normal public who are earning and they can pay, they pay us a certain amount. And students, because we all were students, we couldn't pay 600 rupees per head for a walk. So we decided we'll keep it about 150, 200, and we'll ask others to pay. So that's how we started building up. It was early 2020, but then the pandemic came
Yeah.
and everything had to, stop. But I think that I'll keep that for the next question maybe. But this was how the initial work started at Karwaan, organizing walks. We had organized by, I think by March 2020, we had organized 4 walks.
Oh wow, okay. Wow, that's really cool. So then clearly, okay, you started as this experiential thing of okay, we'll take you through like historical monuments and structures and kind of really um I don't want to say explain it, but I guess maybe do it also in a way through a manner of storytelling because history is stories in a sense, right? By the end of the day, you're essentially kind of recollecting the facts that had happened in a way that's accessible to people. So the gist of what I'm getting is that's what you guys were trying to do. You were just trying to make it more interesting, more accessible, so people would actually give it the sort of importance it kind of deserves in today's day and age. But then having said that, because it's interesting you brought up the pandemic, because if you had only obviously then you were a brand and I keep saying brand because it is a brand in a way, even though I know like it, even though we live in a world where we're trying to like take up different causes and whatnot, it finally does, for better or worse, come down to branding. So then how do you kind of then grow that community also during the pandemic? I mean, I would assume, I don't know, please correct me if I'm wrong, if the fact that I guess people were kind of trapped in the four walls of their house and there probably was that overconsumption of for content and information and just different things to do. I don't know if that's something that also helped with growing your organization. But then how did you kind of maneuver through lockdown in terms of growing Karwan?
So it was early pandemic, March, April, yes, March end and April, the beginning of April 2020, when the government announced a 18-day lockdown, 18-day preventive lockdown. And so we were trapped, of course, we were trapped in the four walls, within the four walls of our house, and we didn't know what was going on. The information was scarce, and often fake news was around about a lot of things. There was a lot of bad news coming from different parts at that time. The government was clueless at that time. So we were thinking of what we could do. And this was very early, and nobody had a clue about Zoom or anything. There was nothing like this earlier, that online lectures was something that we didn't hear uh, before the pandemic.
Yeah.
So we decided that we'll start with a series of conversations called Learn at Home Live Series. And Learning at Home Live Series essentially featured 6 historians or 6 scholars, 6 writers, with a gap of, I think, all they were asked to speak alternate days, so 18 days, 6 speakers, 18 days. And that's how we planned that we would spend the initial lockdown. And that's what we did. We had sessions on food, we had session on Aurangzeb, we had session on Egypt, Egyptology and archaeology. We had a session on Delhi, and Firozshah Kotla, and of course Akbar. And then after that, we decided, because the government that and after that announced that we'll do a 1 month long lockdown. It was not the complete lockdown was yet to come. It was another preventive lockdown that they extended for a month. So then we decided that, we are here for a long game. They are not going to let us go so easily. We knew that something big is happening, and we'll be stuck for a long time. because you can't win a pandemic, you can't overcome a pandemic in just about a month or something. It takes time. That's what bubonic plague taught us in
Yeah.
history. That's what other the history of pandemics. And there's a brilliant book by Chinmay Tumbe on the history of pandemics that came out around that time. So we had this idea that it's going to be a long thing. Then we decided that we'll start something called the Karwaan History Online Festival, and we invited about 62 historians to engage with the crowd on Facebook.
Oh,
Facebook
wow.
became a medium, and we used to share our Facebook passwords and IDs to the because there was no Zoom. We didn't know how we can go live with historians. So we would ask them to log in through our profile, the Caravan profile, and go. We used to ask them to go live from their desktops. It created a lot of it presented a technical challenge, of course, but it created a lot of news among people who were really tired of listening to news, and they were interested in listening to something scholarly that would divert their minds from the bad news and would also enrich their understanding of the past. And we were fortunate to get some very known, reputed scholars on board to engage with the public, with students especially from different universities. And from there, we started building this quote unquote brand of Caravan and featuring these online conversations. And we wanted them to be made available for free. We didn't want to charge anything for these things because these were helping us, and we thought if they are helping us in this pandemic, I think this would help a lot of other people who were struggling at that time. And this was the first wave, which was strange because it was new. It was not as dangerous as the second wave that followed or the
Yeah.
third wave,
Yeah.
but this really helped us in that sense psychologically.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think it's cool you kind of found that niche for yourselves, right? In terms of being able to expand. And I think also maybe because I don't know if it was already in the plan for you guys that if you just wanted to stick with the sort of the walk and learn experiences, or I don't know, did you guys had you already thought about that? Oh, we'd also want to like talk about other things like say the history of food or like cinema, because you guys have a book club now, there is a cinema archive. Were those things you kind of thought that you might branch out into, or was that something that just organically happened?
So, along with the walks, we were doing Karwan Pathaks online before the pandemic.
Okay.
We always had this idea that, if we want to understand the past, heritage work is one way, it's not the only way. So, we have to, of course, explore. And we asked a few people. So, Sohail Hashmi did a brilliant session on cities, history of cities, and how cities emerged in Lodi Garden, which was just if you cross the road, you reach the Lodi Gardens. That's how close our college and Lodi Garden is. So it's just across the road. And we hosted Manimugdha Sharma to talk about Akbar, who we approached after the pandemic to deliver two more sessions. So that's how this was all planned, but these online lectures were never planned. It was
Yeah.
something that came up.
Hmm. Okay. Oh, okay. And because also, I mean, when I was going through like your Instagram page and stuff, I mean, you've also done a lot of interviews with renowned historians and, other well-known people. Again, was that something that just organically happened during lockdown, or, what was that like in terms of doing the Insta lives and stuff? Because that was also really new at that time.
I know it was very new and we were all struggling. We didn't know about Zoom, so we used to do these on a platform called StreamYard, which
Yeah.
was a free, video streaming software. And we were trying to find avenues where we could explore. And this was pandemic really became an opportunity for us to explore the ways we can promote public history because we were all
Hmm.
concerned as history students. It's part of our training that we are made to understand the role of a historian or a history student in society, When society is being divided into these divisive narratives about the past, it's our duty that we present an academic point of view, which people might not agree with, but it's the academia, and the historians do it for it professionally. It's part of their job. So we decided that we'll call up our historians who have inspired us, scholars that we have read in our BA course, and the books that we were reading, we would just invite them. So I think as of now, we have hosted more than 400 scholars on our platform.
Yeah.
All are available for free. And after the pandemic, we started doing these offline lectures also, which are also free for all, in Delhi and in Bombay. And we are trying to expand to different cities now to take that online format, because people are now exhausted with this online content. People don't like
Yeah,
to
yeah.
watch online. They might listen to a podcast like this, but they won't watch a YouTube video. So we
Yeah,
decided
not
we'll
as much.
go not as much, yes, because it's the fatigue, the YouTube fatigue that happened after pandemic. So we decided we'll limit the online discussions, but we'll increase this number of our offline lectures.
Okay. Wow, that's cool. So then, how did you guys come up with like the book club then? Was that something that happened later on, or was that also something that you guys had before?
As I say, I love and my team love experimenting. So
Which is
when we,
amazing.
yeah, we keep on thinking of new things of how we can engage the public, because promoting public history is one thing, but you have to also engage with the public. You can't just
Exactly.
really
Yeah.
go on preaching that you are wrong, you don't know anything. That's something that a lot of people do, but uh, we thought that it is interesting and it's necessary that we also get to interact with people and create a community where people are eager to learn new things, and things that might contradict their own thinking and opinions, but also a space where they can freely express their opinions. So we started with this book club first. It was inaugurated by Professor Romila Thapar, who is one of our greatest scholars on ancient India, early India. So we did the first session of that was on the importance of dissent, and how on her book called Voices of Dissent that came out, I think, 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we wanted to create a platform for not just like-minded people, but people who are interested to learn and to debate and to discuss. And because I am interested as a scholar, as a history student, I'm interested in the history of cinema. And cinema is a medium that, because of my grandfather, of course, and his interest in music, I found my interest in cinema. I decided that I'll create and my team would create this club where we would exchange our notes on cinema, what we are watching, what we should watch, and also invite filmmakers over and have conversations with them. Because as an audience, it's always fascinating to see who made the film and to share our views with the filmmaker. And it's a rare opportunity for
Yeah.
people who are regular viewers. They don't get to meet filmmakers as easily. So we thought we would use the platform to bridge that gap as well, between scholars, between filmmakers, between practitioners and the consumer. So the
Yeah.
practitioner or the filmmaker and the consumer, there should be direct dialogue. So this became a platform for that. And we are trying to come up with more such clubs and more such play avenues for public to engage with the professional, so that they'll get to learn something new. And of course, as professionals, they also need to engage with the public to make their art or their work more refined.
Yeah. No, that's amazing because earlier on the show, so I had this guest Anisha Palat, who studied art history, and she just finished her PhD, and she was talking about her dissertation, which was on the representation of the cow in contemporary Indian art and its relationship with caste and whatnot, which was really fascinating. And of course, we ended up talking about things like, other books like, say, Tale of the Horse, right, by Yashaswini Chandra. Then earlier I had Sadaf Hussain, who was on MasterChef, and he's huge on food history with Forgotten Foods, Dastane Dastarkhan. So, it's so fascinating, I think, especially today, to see how history is actually coming out in literature and in various other forms, be it, with podcasts, with books. I think, like, say, a Lady Doctors or Soni Chattopadhyay's latest book, right, on lady athletes. Anand Ranganathan and his wife are coming out with a book on Indian scientists. So it's real. And of course, P.Sainath's The Last Heroes. So it's really cool to kind of see history being presented in such an accessible way and an interesting way to, the public today. But having said that, you mentioned about the role of a historian, and how it's, according, in your opinion, of course, that, it's to provide an academic overview of, things. But having said that, then, say, in today's day and age, how would you really think, what do you really think the role of a historian is? Because considering, would you say, like, people are not as interested in history because it's not as accessible? So, how do you kind of look at that?
So there is an increased interest in the past, no doubt about this. People are really interested, but what they are really interested in is more of a mythified version of the past, where people are looking to find pride in their identities and they are trying to legitimize that pride in the past. For example, a glorious Hindu history, a glorious Islamic history, a glorious Christian history, etc., etc. And this is happening all over the world.
Hmm.
In this age and time, I think the role of a historian is to put things into perspective because as not everybody can be a doctor, not everybody can be a scientist, likewise, not everybody can be a historian. And when you study history, you get this point that history is not firstly unilateral or it's unidimensional. There are different layers to the past. Those layers might upset a lot of people who believe in a mythified version. And if a story is giving you pleasure or giving you this sense of pride, it's probably not history. That's what a very popular saying on history goes. And I think the role of a historian is to really tell the public, inform the public that or present facts, what according to them are could be history. A very famous scholar once mentioned that you cannot really reconstruct the past. It's impossible to reconstruct the past. How that was, we don't know. So history is written based on interpretations of the evidences and data. And this must be taken into consideration that whatever is out there as history today may be proven wrong with the when a new evidence comes to light and when a new interpretation comes to light. So it's a very famous, I think, Indian thinking or philosophy that ekam sat bahuda vipravadanti. There's one truth. Wise people perceive that truth differently. And in history, there's nothing called as truth. You
Okay.
can't really find, it's like peeling an onion to find the onion. So the skin of that onion is the onion that you have to consume, but instead you are looking for something that is not there or that is there but you are ignoring. So that's how history is being perceived today, not just India, but all over. And for us who are students of history, that's really something that concerns, and we are very concerned about, and we are trying to tell people that don't look for uh, don't look for Ratna Pathak Shah actually mentioned in my interview when I interviewed her for Caravan that before seeking answers, learn to ask questions. So the public is asking the wrong questions. History is asking the right questions to your evidences, and that's what the training of a historian prepares you to do. So we are trying to tell them that you have to ask the right questions to the past. So yeah, so that's the role of a historian. It's a very complex role, and historians are often targeted on social medias because
Yeah,
their
yeah.
narrative might not suit the public, and the public may have another way of thinking, which is totally correct. We, as historians, we must not dismiss their understanding of the past. Their understanding of past tells us another thing about how history is perceived, and that might help us put our point across in a better way, which might make them understand that, you whatever you are thinking is correct, but maybe think about it, in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I really like the way you put that. That sort of room for interpretation, basically, to kind of entertain different possibilities. Because the truth is, even though there are certain facts, you still don't know the full truth of something that has happened and transpired, right? So I think that's really cool that you put it across like that. Having said that, obviously history education is something you're passionate about, which is what you're doing with Karwan. And there are quite a few other organizations that have also come up in the past few years, right? Be it there was this article I came across in the Hindu, which was about Instagrammers who are making history cool again. You were one of them. Then, of course, there was Eric Chopra from Ithihasology, Shrutin Lal, Anirudh, Kanisetty, and like a bunch of others. So, it's really cool that this is sort of happening now, that there are people actually advocating and kind of really getting into the space of history education. But what do you think can really change in terms of history education, especially, I guess, when it comes to maybe schools, colleges, because that's actually where the seed is planted, right? Because I know for me, while growing up, it's really funny. So my first exposure to history was through my grandmother, because she would tell me these stories about growing up in pre-independent India and what it was like having the whole independence struggle, but more from like a Kerala perspective, from where she was. But because her father, I think, would travel a lot and stuff, like she had a more holistic overview of certain things. So for me, that's my first memory. And then I remember going to school, and then it was so dry, and I just couldn't take to it the same way, like I would take to it the way my grandmother would, like, tell me stories about different things. So what do you think can be done to, I guess, improve history education, or just to make it easier, I guess, for students or just people in general?
I think we need to make corrections or improvements in the primary education, because that's where the seeds are sown, so to say, of history or understanding of history. A lot of people, majority of them, leave history after class 10, because till then you are you know it's compulsory to study history. After that, you make a decision that you want to go into the sciences or commerce or history, humanities. Within humanities, you try to go into political science or sociology or history, etc. So what we need to do is we have to uh, improve the education system class 10 till class 10, and improve the way history is taught. We have to introduce activities that engages students and into questioning about what they understand, because what we are trying to do here is we have more focus. Our focus is on examinations. We want to get good marks. We want to excel in the report cards. But what is going in the in the mind and the brain is we're not bothered, because till then you just need to get good marks in order to get into the sciences. That's what the Indian ecosystem has become. But the scientists now, after so many years of leaving history, they try to tell you, what historians are saying is wrong, but what I'm saying is correct. That's what happens when you do not study history correctly till class 10. So what we really need to do is to introduce activities that invite students to engage. For example, organizing heritage walks. I don't know if there was ever this thing or concept of heritage walk when I was growing up, and when I was in school. They used to take us on a picnic to a zoo, or to somewhere, to a park. but they would never take us to a historical monument or a museum. So taking students to museums, taking students to a heritage walk really make this boring, dull subject, which is for people. If I ask you what you understand of history, I think three things that comes to mind is kings, battles, and dates. These are
Yeah.
things that whenever you think of history, it's that pops up. But why? So why don't you think that I was taught the history of food, where samosa came from, or how tea was introduced to India, or uh, the kurta that I'm wearing, how this came to be? Because the swing was never part of Indian culture. It was always unstitched cloths in India. A blouse were introduced very late in history. Then how things came up, the chair that I'm sitting on, when did this came up in the chronology? How did we how did we come to this point from sitting on the stone to sitting on a mat, sitting on a tables, etc.? Who decided how things would be? Or if Harappans, what did Harappans eat? How did Harappans live? These are the questions that would excite a young mind. I'm happy to see very young writers, people of my generation, your generation, uh, writing about writing children literature now. People like I was reading, uh, I think it's Nikhil Gulati, if I'm not wrong, People of the Indus. It's a
Oh,
brilliant,
yeah.
it's a
Yeah,
brilliant
yeah.
graphic book on to introduce young people to Indus. And then I think Yuval Noah Harari made another graphic novel on Homo sapiens.
Sapiens. Yeah, yeah.
Then I recently read a graphic novel on Mahatma Gandhi. These were the things that were missing for us. Amar Chitra Katha was a big, was a big thing, and it was really a window, an interesting window. We really need to introduce those as well in schools and engage the young minds. Don't think of them as dumb people who don't understand. They are the people who would vote to elect a government after a few years. They are the people who are, you have to train them to think critically. So we have to engage more in that age slot. After that, it's more or less, it's more or less, you really can't do anything after 10 because people have chosen or their parents have chosen their career paths, and they would listen to history on a reel or somewhere, on a WhatsApp text, and they would
Yeah.
believe in it. So, yeah, so we have to make changes in the education system. It's very necessary.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you on that. Um, but yeah, I mean, hopefully, I mean, I think with more educators coming in, hopefully we will slowly but surely see some positive change there. But yeah, like coming back to writing, so and the book that you had written, which, as you mentioned, was on APJ Abdul Kalam, and it's called The Teacher I Never Met. Came out when you were 17, and I believe you spent a couple of years, I think about 6 years or so, researching and writing it. So how does that happen? Like, so you must have been what, like literally 11 years old when this thought came to you. How does that happen to an 11-year-old child who wakes up and says, I want to write a book? And that too on like, and that too like non-fiction on APJ Abdul Kalam. Please take us through that journey.
So it was, I think, 2012, April 2012 or something, when Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, the former president, visited IIT Kanpur, where I used to live. So he visited the institute, and it was the Golden Jubilee celebrations. And we were all invited. We were studying in campus school, which was a campus school inside IIT for the kids of IIT Kanpur. We were students there, and we were as part of that ceremony that was taking place in the institute. We were invited to attend the ceremony because Dr. Kalam was very close to young kids, and he wanted to interact with young people. So I didn't know about that. I took a day off from school, and I was enjoying. I didn't know that my friends were getting to meet APJ Abdul Kalam. But I don't know how, and suddenly we all I really asked my parents to take me to the auditorium to see Dr. Kalam. And I recorded a video also. I still have that video on my phone. It's on a it's in a very bad quality. But that's when I saw him from from very far, not very close, from a distance. And you know, not exaggerating, I really felt the rays radiating. As a historian, I don't like to, as a history student, I don't like to exaggerate, but that's what I felt as a 11-year-old, because I had heard of him from so many people. My parents, being scientists, talked about him, how great a scientist he was, rocket scientist. So for me, it was a very big thing. But then I saw the picture of my friends, with Dr. Kalam, and I was not there because I didn't go with my school and I went with my parents. We were not allowed to meet Kalam, but my friends did meet Kalam, and they still post about that on Facebook, and I'm very jealous even today
Wow.
that they got to meet. So that's why the title, The Teacher I Never Met. I only saw him from a distance, but I never met him in person. And after a few years in 2017, I think he passed away. And that's when the news came in. It was, I think, evening 6:37 in the evening when when the news came in that Dr. Kalam had a heart attack in Shillong and he passed away. And that was a really a moment that I felt it's like it was a personal loss for me because I had lost a mentor. I had grew up listening to his lectures and his engagements with young kids, and it really inspired me to that's I think that he was one of the reasons why I wanted to get into politics, or I wanted to get into policy making, because uh, he always asked young people to get into policy making in all his lectures if you listen. So that's when I saw him in 2011, I wrote a diary entry. Uh, I used to maintain a diary when I was a kid. So I wrote a diary entry, and from there, I when I heard the news, I got reminded of the diary. I found the diary in my cupboard, and from there I started writing. I went back and I just saw all his videos again, read his books. I had all his books in my library, and then I decided to write a comparative biography, which is tracing his childhood with my childhood, and also trying to see if we can how uh, it was like teaching myself about Kalam, not writing for other people. So I wrote it in a diary, continuing that diary entry. I wrote that entire book, and then I thought it would be nice to get it published so that other people can get to know about Kalam. And that's how this happened in 2017.
That is amazing. That is so cool that you had that kind of, I think, just that inspiration, but also the sort of discipline to follow up on it in that sense, right? Because at that age, usually it doesn't come as easily to a lot of people. So I think it's amazing, and hats off to you for pulling it off. So then you went and you pitched to like publishers and
I pitched to a lot of publishers, a lot of them who I might be working with now, but at that time everybody said no because it was not a very good manuscript. Of course, as a 17-year-old, you cannot be a Shakespeare or Chaucer. You'll have to
yeah,
be whatever you are. So I then decided that I would self-publish it with a much unknown publisher. I think he's still unknown, that publisher. So if he's watching, uh, so then I went in ahead and published it through a young publisher from Chhattisgarh called Idea Publishing, and he published the book. The book was out. It was well received, and I think now it is one of the suggestive readings for class 12 in Goa board. So I
that's
think students
amazing.
are reading it. So yeah, that's a long journey as a writer. I'm now working on my next book that might be out next year, hopefully.
Oh, wow. What is that
Yeah,
about, if I may ask?
it's about the history, some part of. the history of Indian cinema, which I
Oh wow,
can't
okay.
tell you right
No,
now,
no,
but
that's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
I hope
Okay,
that you'll
a
invite me
book.
to another episode where we
I
can
would
explore.
love to. I would love to. Maybe we can do a panel discussion with you. And we also had Pratyush Parasuraman last season, who's also writing a book on Indian cinema. He's a film critic, culture critic. So I think it'd be cool to actually do a session with both of you. Actually, so we will keep that in mind for sure. I think putting that out there right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, but it's amazing that you are kind of, and it's two things you love, it's cinema and it's history, so I think what more could you ask for, right? So yeah, do keep us posted when the book is out. Would love to pick it up and read for sure. um but yeah, you also contribute for The Wire, and you used to write for Youth Ki Awaaz and a bunch of other places. So then, when did you kind of figure that, oh, I can also maybe do this? Because yes, you are a history student, and you're not kind of just limiting yourself there. You're also like contributing like thought pieces. I read your piece on hypermasculinity in Indian cinema. So that, I mean, there is a lot of history in that article, what you've tried to weave in, but it's really cool that you're kind of putting out thought pieces like this. So when did you think that, oh, this is something I could do too?
Uh, I think it has more to do with my family and the way I was brought up. Thanks to my parents and my grandparents, that I grew up in this whole academic family where we were asked to read, we were asked to write, and we did it with a lot of fun. Actually, we were not forced. It was something that we were all interested in, and discussions on history, discussions on cinema were all part of uh, the growing up process. And when I decided that I would go into this whole politics and political science journey in class 11th, I wanted to be an IAS officer or a politician. That was the
Oh,
two
wow.
career options that I wanted to explore. And I had met a lot of politicians by then, thanks to I would call it a privilege, or it's the privilege of being in an institution that invited a lot of people, and I got to meet. So that's a privilege. That's not something that I earned. That was something that I was presented with. So this is the kind of background. But then I thought it is important to also think. If you want to get into something, you have to be a good thinker. You have to think about what is going on. And Youth Ki Awaaz, which was a citizen journalism platform, that became a starting point or a career launcher of some sort for me to express what I was thinking. I wrote a lot of articles there. I think they are still there on the Youth Ki Awaaz platform. And recently, because as scholars, as history students, we cannot always write academic papers. Sometimes we
Fair.
also have to reflect on the society that we live in, and that's again a role of a history student and historian, that you reflect on the contemporary society using your insights on the past. So if you read any of my article, I always try to connect it with the past and try to bridge a try to see if there are reflections of the past on the present, and that's what history truly is. That, uh, I read a I read a quote by R.G. Collingwood in his book called On History, that a past that a historian studies is not a dead past. It is all around us. We live in the past. We always think of the past. So that pushed me to write about the contemporary society and reflect on what is happening today. So when the government decided that they would change the NCRT books and introduce other kind of syllabus, history syllabus, I wrote a piece called towards towards a medieval understanding of the past, where I said, we are going to theology rather than history, and that's what that happened earlier also in history. I gave a few examples, and yeah, The Wire, Quint. I write for different organizations as a freelancer, of course, to express what I'm thinking, and so that people may agree or disagree. That's up to them, but it's important to have a voice, and that's for everybody out there. Have your own voice, and have the courage to express it.
Yeah. No, for sure. And like I said, more power to you. And so I'll come to why I also specifically mentioned that article on hypermasculinity, because what I found interesting, and I don't know if if the website wasn't updated when I went through it, but when I went through the Karwan website, your core team, most of your core team are women. I think you were the only guy I found. Like, please correct me if I'm wrong, but that's literally when I went through the website. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because when you were obviously also writing about hypermasculinity in cinema, you mentioned, you quoted Nasruddin Shah from Nikhil Taneja's podcast, right? Saying that, mardo ki insecurity bad rahi hai. Like, men are getting more insecure. Hence, cinema has become this way to kind of cushion that and, make it be more encouraging and motivating to men and that whole masculine thing. But then having said that, how are you navigating, I guess, I know it's a really silly question to ask, but I'm asking this because we have cinema like this, as you mentioned. So I feel like it's something we should put out, since you're representing the male gender right now to some degree, and it's just one opinion. But I'm just curious then, like, how do you then work in that sort of, like, how have you found the balance in that sense?
So, there's a great gender disparity in Karwaan.
Yeah, there are
Only,
more women than men, I
yes,
figured. So I was
yes,
like, wow, this is a first.
yes, yes, yes. It's only me and Anirudh, two of us who are, male and others are female in our team, and it's brilliant. I think women are better than men in many, many senses, and that's what I think biology also says now. But it's brilliant, and we don't really see the gender. We see the kind of work they put out, and
Yeah.
we also have other people. I think one of us, we have one men in the volunteering also, and others are of course
Okay.
women. But I think they are better researchers. They are brilliant. Our team is, I think, I'm very proud of my team and what they do. But coming to the question of this whole masculinity, uh, since for the last 10, 15 years, there's a growth in this kind of hyper masculinity in the society. People are trying to be violent to prove how manly they are, and this is kind of dangerous. This is becoming dangerous. We are living in an overheated time where humor is not uh, taken as humor, but as offense.
Yeah.
Uh, we see a lot of news of mob lynchings happening, killings happening, crime is on the rise. These are things that is happening in the society, and in this society, in this political, socio-political situation, if we are getting films like Animal or Kabir Singh or film like RRR, which is RRR on front value is not about masculinity. It's more about,
Yeah.
but in the depiction of the men as saviors
Or a
is another,
pushpa.
or Pushpa again, which somebody said that it's about the Dalit man coming up, but it's not really that. It's more, if you have to go deeper. Dalit man coming up is something in court or other films, that they never talk about. Uh, I think it is important to understand that cinema really plays a big role in our society because cinema is the most influential medium. Hitler used it to propagate Nazism in Germany. America used it to promote war, Vietnam War and others, that happened. And then other countries made films on Vietnam to talk about American imperialism. And then the French New Wave come in that challenge this whole notion of American capitalism. So, using those understanding, I thought that it would be interesting to see this whole concept of hypermasculinity because it really is there. And yeah, that's why I think I wrote that piece, and uh, that's something that people have worked on.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
No. No, but I think it's really cool that you have so many women working in your organization, and there's
yeah,
no
it is
like
women empowerment, huh? So, yeah, men need empowerment in the team. So, but yeah, no, we really like it, and we want to keep it like this. This is the best team, and we require other people also to come in. All sorts of people should come in.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, of course. I mean, definitely it is also to do with ability and skill. But I was just, because when I was going through a website, I was just so amazed. There's so many women who are on this team, and I was so happy to see that. But like, it's just really cool that, you have that sort of work environment in place, right? And structure where it is equitable in a sense. So it's pretty cool you're doing that. So more power to you guys. Um, and yeah, so for some, and we're kind of now coming towards the end, hopefully I will not keep you further. But so first thing is, for anyone who is interested in history then, but is possibly intimidated by it or thinks it's too dry, what are, I guess, some resources you would recommend for people to just start off with?
I would recommend them to watch good cinema. Not Jodha Akbar or films like that. But films like if you have to watch on partition, watch a film like Garam Hawa by M.S. Sathyu, or Schindler's List was often talked about a few months back on the on the genocide or the that happened with the Jews in Germany. Then there is a Netflix documentary, World War II in Color. It's a fascinating documentary on World War II. And films like All Quiet on the Western Front, and there are so many films now on historical wars and battles. But that again is something that I already talked about. That when you think of history, you think of war. So we have to go beyond that. The other resource for people who are interested who want to get interested into history is graphic novels. I love graphic novels. Thanks to these manga comics and others that were introduced to India a few years ago, and there's a whole there's a increased interest in these kind of animated novels and animated shows. I can recommend you hundreds of uh, films by Studio Ghibli.
Yeah,
The
oh yeah, lovely.
brilliant Death Note and so many more that you can watch. They might
Death
not
Note is
interest
not
you.
history though.
No, it's not history. That's what I'm getting into. That won't interest you into history directly, but that might interest you in graphic novels later on. And you
Ah,
can
yeah,
pick up
okay, yeah.
Nitin Gulati's People of the Indus, or that graphic novel on Mahatma Gandhi. Read Amar Chitrakatha. It's a brilliant introduction. That was my introduction to history as a kid. Read Amar Chitrakatha collection. And another, if you are interested in watching multimedia, which is YouTube videos, you can go for John Green's Crash Course on History. John Green is the person who wrote Fault in Our Stars, and I think he studied history professionally also. So he has a whole series of interesting crash course videos, animated videos, for you to these are 20 minutes long videos for you to understand different eras in the past. Then again, I would ask you to get some good games, board games. Uh,
Okay.
the, uh, I was just going through a game called Sashan. It's
Oh,
made by
yeah,
a
yeah, I've heard of
filmmaker called
this.
Anand
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Gandhi. So it's a fascinating political game that forces you to think of elections and political history, how elections happen in India. Then you can, of course, if you are interested in that game, you can go ahead and read. So you have to find a catalyst that would force you to study history. Not directly. If you go looking for history directly, you would be bored in just 10 minutes. Find something which is not history but would force you to take interest in history. So that's why Studio Ghibli is a great, platform to start, and it's on Netflix. So people who watch Netflix may go and watch that. And even I think shows like Raja Rasoi or An Kahaniya, which was on Epic when I
Mm,
was growing
yeah.
up, that really fascinated me to food history. And films like Padmavat, for whatever they are worth, they really are well made, at least aesthetically. So they force you to read more about Padmavati and the whole myth around Padmavati or the history of Padmavati. So yeah, those are the resources. there's no end to the kind of resources that you I can connect anything to history. That's my
Yeah, I know you
problem.
can.
So that's
I
my
think I
problem.
think it's a no, I think that's a great problem to have. I don't think it's a problem also. I think it's a great skill to have. Because, when you were saying, like, when you talk about games, there was this game I played called Secret Hitler. I don't know if you've heard of it. So it's actually, and it's quite it's basically you get divided into teams, and one group is the set of Nazis, this thing, and basically the game is about you have to spot the Nazis before Hitler can take over. But it's interesting because it's very, like, again, like you said, very political. You're kind of thinking, you're like, it kind of makes it piques your interest in knowing more actually about what happened with the Jews, with Hitler, how Hitler came up, how he kind of developed this thing. So it's quite fascinating. And then, of course, with World War II and whatnot. So it's stuff like this, like you said correctly. It really does kind of pique your interest in terms of going and finding out further. There's also this newsletter which I follow, which I really like, called Dark Walk, which is on South Asian
Yes, they're
literature and
brilliant.
art. I
I love them.
love their
Yeah.
work. Yeah, yeah. I think that's also a really cool newsletter to follow. But yeah, having said that, what are, like, the stories and books or movies that really inspired you and stuck with you while growing up, or just generally that just have like a special place in your heart, or which have impacted you?
Before that, I also want to recommend another resource because you mentioned social media. There are memes now, and people really
Yeah.
love memes. So, our friends Mad Mughal memes really deserve a mention because they're really good with historical memes. So, those again may help you build an interest in history. Watch memes, see the memes, and have a good laugh, and then of course go and read about whatever is written in the meme. So that's another thing. Films that remain with me. I watch a lot of films. I think I watch about 30, 40 films in a month or something like that. I watch a
Oh,
lot of films.
wow.
I might
Oh,
not
wow.
able to complete any of them or some of them, but I start. At least I start a lot of films. I want to watch as many films as possible. But the one film that really piqued my interest in history was Mughal-E-Azam from 1960. Dilip Kumar, Madhubala, and Prithviraj Kapoor, Durga Khote.
Oh,
That
wow.
was a
You watched it in black
brilliant.
and white?
I watched earlier. I watched it in black and white when on YouTube. The color version came in I think 2010 or something. I watched it in when I was very little. I was 5 or 6 years old. That's when I watched it on TV. And then the color came in 2008 or 2009, and I watched it again on. We had a DVD player, and we had the color DVD of Mughal-E-Azam, and we used to watch it every Friday, Saturday. It was such a fascinating film, and I still consider it to be one of the best made historicals of our Indian cinema. It was such beautiful. It was such a nice film, beautifully produced by K. Asif. He lost everything while making the film. He lost every single penny that he had. He had to take loans from a lot of people. His financer ran after the partition when he was making the film earlier. There's a story that there's a film called Anarkali that came out in 1936 or 37 or 46, I believe 46. You have to just check the date. Around that time, Kiasif started making this film called Mughal-E-Azam, but the financier ran away after the partition to Pakistan, and then Kiasif had to start the process again and made the film finally in 1960, with Dilip Kumar. So that's one film that stuck with me, and I keep going back to that film. Another is Shyam Benegal's Manthan, which was on Amul, the creation of Amul Anand Milk Union.
Union Limited.
So that again is another film that really inspired me to get into the new wave, studying the new wave. And he was I had the opportunity of meeting him, Shyam Benegal, and interviewing him on Karwaan later on. So the life really comes full circle when you are inspired from a filmmaker and you really get to meet him. Another film that I think remained with me is Spider-Man. The
Oh,
Amazing
which
Spider-Man.
one? So
Uh,
not Andrew Garfield or
yeah, I think it was Andrew Garfield, the second
okay.
Spider-Man.
Okay, Andrew Garfield, yeah.
Yeah, so that again is a film that I associate my childhood with. And of course, Anaconda 3 came out when I was 8 or
Oh,
9. That's again a film that I watched much later. It was a A-rated film, I believe. I watched it much later, of course. It's an interesting film. Uh, Jurassic Park. These are the films that, have nothing to do with history, but they are really
yeah, I
good.
know, but
They,
just
they, they,
yeah,
they
really
fascinate
like
me. Recently, I have been watching a lot of documentaries. So Gurvinder Singh's documentary on the peasant movement, the Punjab movement that happened a few years ago, called Trolley Times. Then The Golden Thread by Anuva Jain, if I'm not wrong. I watched at the Geo Mami Mumbai Film Festival. And films on socio political conditions are things that really inspire me or fascinate me to think. And on men, if you have to think of, the men, the hyper masculine or anything, I would any day go for Prakash Mehra's Zanjeer over anything, because Zanjeer is of, Amitabh Bachchan becoming the angry young man, or Saeed Akhtar Mirza's Albert Pinto को गुस्सा क्यों आता है, where Nasiruddin Shah is becoming the angry young man. So these are the two archetypes or the two characters of the angry young man, which are much better than today's angry young man.
yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing, those lovely recommendations. Definitely going to check out the ones I haven't already. But yeah, one last thing I wanted to ask because I was curious about this is since you are in this space as a historian and a history educator, have you ever faced any like ridiculous misconceptions or assumptions about what you do?
Uh, I was at a friend's place, and I think he would listen to this. He might be listening to the podcast right now. I His father asked me, "What do you do?" I say, "I study history. I write about the past." No, no, that is your hobby, but what do you do professionally? How do you
Oh
earn
my
money? These are the kind of things that you listen as a history student, as a historian in training. People don't take it as a profession. They think you are not working. You are academics is not a profession until you are a professor or something that you are teaching somewhere. So that a kind of thing, but misconceptions of history, I listen to it every day on WhatsApp and other things, where somebody would say that Anarkali did this, or Shah Jahan chopped off the hands, or samosas are Indians, it went outside, or for example, what were the myths? There are so many myths actually that you really I love those. I love those myths. I ask people to send me historical myths.
Wow, interesting. Oh, I love how for a lot of these like professions, generally people who I interview with like unconventional, they're unconventional because I guess people just don't understand them. Where they say, it's like they're like, oh, but this is your hobby. What else do you do? That's like the most common thing I feel
Yeah,
like that
yeah.
has come up. But okay, but still more power to you and what you're doing. It's amazing. So I'll ask two questions. So first one is, what are your aspirations, personally, professionally, creatively, just, things you're looking forward to in the near or even distant future?
In the near future, I'm looking to pass my exams, which starts tomorrow. But after that, I plan to get two of my books out next year, hopefully, fingers crossed. And I plan to we as a team in Karwaan plan to expand to different cities. We have in 23 we expanded to 7 cities. In 24 we try to expand it to at least 20, and have conversations, have walks in those cities. And we were the first to start walks in Kanpur, and we were the first among the first in Lucknow to start walks. In Mumbai we started this Basuda's Bombay walk in 23. So hopefully we'll expand those in different cities in 24. and to also promote history among public in a better way, to experiment more and more with new platforms coming up. There's a new platform called Clubhouse that came out in pandemic. So how can we do sessions there? Or there's a platform called, we are now trying to experiment with Reels as well, which is again taking up on social media. People want smaller content, crisp content. Then in distant future, I really want to be somebody who can work in this public history domain as as an academician, as a professor, or anything like that. So yeah,
Wow, that's amazing. And maybe we'll see you in politics as well. Who knows?
who knows if they offer me a Rajya Sabha seat, maybe. So, but not Lok Sabha.
Yeah, no, but we never know, right? So fingers crossed. Let's just put all your manifestations out there today. But yeah, finally, what is a piece of advice or learning you'd like to share? Just something, you've kind of experienced and wish more people were aware of.
So after every lecture, every conversation, I say a line. It has become a motto kind of a thing, that keep learning, keep reading, and keep thinking, because that's how you'll keep yourself sane in these insane times. This is an advice that I would give to everybody.
Yes, very much needed advice, I think, in today's day and age. And on that note, we have now come to the end of this interview. Thank you so much for being here, Shan. I know you have exams starting tomorrow. So, everyone who's listening to this in the new year, you know what Ishan was like juggling between to do this interview. But no, thank you so much for doing this. It was lovely talking to you. I hope you had fun.
Thank you so much, Sangeeta. Yes, it's fascinating to see these kind of, I listened to some of your podcast earlier, and you are doing something worthwhile, and this is something
Oh,
that must
thank
be
you.
done, of course, because some of these conversations were really interesting, that talked about the commercial world, the materialistic world, or so to say, but also finding their own capsule of stillness, or whatever they want to call it, where they were trying to find their own voice. It's important, as I said, to have a voice of your own, and you have got an important voice in this domain of podcasting. I hope that you keep it up, and you keep inviting good people to have these conversations, because we really need to bring back the tradition of conversations. We have stopped talking to each other, and that's not what India was. India always, the culture of India was always to have conversations. Vaad vivad, discussions and debates were the essential features of our culture, and we are losing them. So people like you are trying to keep that alive. So thank you so much for all the good work that you do with this podcast.
Thank you so much. So that was my conversation with Ishan Sharma. It was so much fun talking to him about his journey with Karwaan Heritage, history, writing, and so much more. Closing this episode with the poem written by Faiz Ahmad Faiz and narrated by Ishan. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I'll see you next week with a new guest and a new chronicle to share. Talk soon!
I don't have my own personal writings to read out, so I think I'll just read out my favorite nazm, as I mentioned, Bol by Faiz Ahmad Faiz, which I think it inspires me to be creative. It inspires me to express my opinions, my ideas freely through my writings and through whatever I do. बोल के लब आज़ाद हैं तेरे, बोल ज़बां अब तक तेरी है, तेरा सुतवा जिस्म है तेरा, बोल की जान अब तक तेरी है। देख की आहन गर की दुका में तुंद हैं शोले, सुर्ख हैं आहन, खुलने लगे कफलों के दहाने, फैला हर एक जंजीर का दामन। बोल ये थोड़ा वक्त बहुत है, जिस्म ज़बां की मौत से पहले, बोल के सच जिंदा है अब तक, बोल जो कुछ कहना है कह ले, बोल के लब आज़ाद हैं तेरे. So I'll also translate this Nazm Bol by Faiz Ahmad Faiz into English for people who don't know Urdu. Speak, for your two lips are free. Speak, your tongue is still your own. This straight body still is yours. Speak, your life is still your own. See how in the blacksmith's forge flames leap high and steel glows red. Padlocks opening wide their jaws, every chain's embrace outspread. Time enough is the brief hour until body and tongue lie dead. Speak, for the truth is living yet. Speak whatever must be said. So, this is some part of the translation. It further goes, speak, this little time is plenty before the death of body and tongue. Speak, for truth is still alive. Speak, say whatever is to be said. बोल कि लब आज़ाद हैं तेरे.